Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Marcin Kleczynski, CEO of Malwarebytes. Marcin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited. You're doing something that's kind of interesting, and you've been kind of doing this for a long time, and you have quite an impressive background, especially for how young you are. So maybe before we kind of get into Malwarebytes, let's kind of cover your background and kind of where you grew up.
Sure. So I actually was born in Poland. When I was three years old, my parents moved us to Chicago, Illinois. And I lived there pretty much all my life. A year and a half ago, I moved to California, which is really the first place I've kind of left Illinois for, and that's where I'm running the company today.
Okay, interesting. So how did you kind of get into technology growing up? Like, what was your passion, or what got you kind of interested?
I loved video games. I also loved stealing video games because I couldn't afford them.
Sure.
So I was something like 12 years old playing a lot of video games on the computer, the shared Dell that everybody had under their under their desk with the 56K modem. And I got my computer infected, and I guess the rest is history, as they say. The parents were pretty upset.
Sure. So what happened? So you torrented something, or it probably wasn't torrents at that point, but you downloaded a game from the internet and you got kind of your computer got infected and you had to fix it, or how did that kind of come to be?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it was Kaza at the time, or whatever the cool thing was at the time. And I thought I was downloading a video game, and I open it. All of a sudden, pop-ups are coming up. My mom's over my shoulder, basically saying, "What did you do with the computer?" And
Sure.
I had to take matters into my own hands. So I went online. I couldn't afford a video game, let alone a repair shop.
Sure.
So I went online. I Googled my symptoms, like WebMD kind of style, right? And I landed on a forum of just volunteers all over the world that were helping people like me get malware off of their computer. And I posted my question, and somebody came to my rescue. But the whole process that she made me go through took like 3 days. So I said, to heck with this. I'm gonna fix it.
Sure. So roughly what year was this, just out of curiosity?
So I believe the first malware infection I had was 2002. So
Okay.
I'm 26 today. If you do the math, I think I was like 12 or 13 playing video games at the time.
Sure. No, that's awesome. And just kind of curious to know kind of time frame, because like I remember those days and that kind of era, but just for the listener, right? So I'm curious then, did you go to university or any kind of post-secondary for this stuff? Are you kind of self-taught, or how did you kind of teach yourself to kind of basically build software?
Good question. The remaining part of the story, I guess, is, once I got my computer clean, I got to work. At the age of 12, 13, my dad bought me some programming books, and one of them was one of those For Dummies books, the
Sure.
yellow ones
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
embarrassed to read in public.
Sure.
And so I learned
everybody's got them.
everybody's got it. Like, the finance people have something like PowerPoint for Dummies.
Sure.
So I learned most of my initial programming from that, and I decided to stick around that community of people that had helped me and automate some of these very tedious processes that they were making the people they were helping go through. So instead of taking 3 days and 50 steps like I had to take, I wanted to make that process more seamless. Now, around that time, 2003, 2004, I started putting out these freeware applications that would automate these processes. And the antivirus industry is starting to fall flat on its face.
Sure.
So the McAfee's, the Symantec's, whatever the antiviruses that were cool at the time fell from grace because malware was changing.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense.
So, to answer your question then,
Sure.
So I went to high school, of course. Around that time, we launched the first version of the product in 2008.
Wow.
And in August of 2008, I'm actually due at the University of Illinois. So I went to Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. And the company's really starting to take off kind of a couple months before I have to go down there. So I have a really tough decision to make, but I ended
Sure.
up graduating.
Okay, so what program did you take then?
Computer science. I learned how to program for real.
Okay, no, that's awesome. So you were obviously running the company while you were in school then too?
I was running the company out of a dorm room. Then I was running the company out of an apartment. and then I was running the company out of a fraternity house, which
Really?
was a very interesting experience to say
I,
the least.
I can imagine. That's awesome though. But I think like a lot of kind of startups and whatnot, kind of basically have kind of a similar story where they're started in kind of a dorm room or before college or during college or whatnot. And I think that's fascinating. And I can imagine the fraternity kind of trying to program and while things are going on and partying and that kind of stuff.
I think it was for the better. My friends really kept me grounded throughout the whole process. The company's making, some serious money at the time, and I tell my friends maybe I got to go do this thing or I have a press interview, and they're like, "All right, hotshot, let's go to the bar, let's get a beer. Don't stop talking so highly of yourself." So they kept me really grounded through the whole process.
That's good though. I think that's super important, right? Because there's a lot of people that get this like huge ego and you need people to kind of keep it in check. And it's awesome that you had that, especially when you were kind of you're still successful, but like when you're kind of growing into that success, right?
I completely agree. I think part of the reason the culture of the company is as it is because of the way my friends treated me and treated the company and so on. So I think it's a good thing for sure.
Sure. So maybe let's talk. Okay, like you kind of covered quickly what the company is, but maybe just like let's cover exactly what the company is and what exactly it does, because you guys do different things for personal and kind of business.
Yeah, the whole thesis behind the first idea of the product was what happened to me. I had malware on my computer. Getting it off was really hard. And why did I get malware on my computer if I had an antivirus? I mean, those were the two problems I set out to solve. And so I think we solved the first one first, which is let's build a disinfection product. Malware is on the computer. And I had met a guy on the forums, Bruce, who's actually my co-founder.
Oh,
and him and I were the first kind of developers and engineers that were working on the project.
Wait.
So Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm kind of curious. Like, so you met your co-founder on an internet forum.
Oh, it's even better than that. So I'm 16, he's 35. Try to explain to your mother you're working with a 35-year-old guy building an anti-malware product. And then on the other hand, try to explain to your wife you're working with a 16-year-old kid on an anti-malware product. It was a really interesting dynamic.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. I'm always kind of fascinated by how kind of people meet their co-founders. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just kind of wanted to elaborate on that kind of thing. So you guys were working together. At what point, like how long were you guys kind of chatting online before you decided to kind of co-found the company?
It was so anticlimactic. I think we met maybe 2005, or I heard about him, through the forums on the work he was doing. So he worked at a repair shop somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I mean, literally middle of Massachusetts, one stop sign in the whole town.
Okay.
And so he saw a lot of malware, infected computers come through the door. Very similar situation. He had no tools to remove the malware off the computers. So he was doing it manually. He was ripping it out piece by piece. So he knew a lot about it. So I met him online, 2005, 2006. I was working on some separate projects that he was contributing to. And I swear it was as simple as an email to him saying, "Hey, did you want to build an anti-malware product?" And I think the only response I got back was like, "Yes."
That's awesome.
So then we got to work, and we worked maybe 2 years on building this disinfection technology. And in 2008, when we launched it, the whole idea was these helpers on the forums making people go through 50 steps. They could just say, "Go run Malwarebytes," and make it a lot easier.
Sure. That's awesome. So how long did you guys kind of work together before you ended up meeting in person?
We had not spoken on the phone. We had not met in person. All of it was through MSN Messenger.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Exactly, up until maybe mid 2008, and by then we had made a couple $100,000. The company had made $1,000. So we said, maybe we should meet because we were going to another event in Chicago actually, and I swear it was just as anticlimactic. It was like a hey.
That's awesome.
How you been?
That's awesome. So do you guys now work in the same office, or you guys still kind of work remote from each other?
We do work remote. The first 30, maybe 35 employees that we hired were people from this community that were helping others. It turns out it's very easy to hire somebody doing what they already love, that they're doing it for free.
Okay.
and just pay them. It was very easy to reach out to them and saying, look, we started this company called Malwarebytes. We'd love for you to come help with our support team or our engineering team. You seem to know a lot about the topic. You're already doing this for free. Why don't we pay you for it? And it was a very easy sell. So Bruce and I were remote for the longest time. In fact, I had a partner here in the San Francisco Bay Area that put the first office on the ground. And so I continued to be remote at the University of Illinois as the company grew here in the Bay Area.
Interesting.
So by the time I had graduated from college, we had maybe 200 employees worldwide.
Wow.
And I moved back to Chicago, and I had to fly back and forth here almost every week, at which point I said, to heck with this. I'm gaining like 50 pounds on this damn plane and moved to the Bay Area. Bruce continues to be in Massachusetts, but he's a very good remote person, kind of worker, as many people are in our organization.
Sure. Well, I think that's becoming more and more common nowadays that, you're looking for people with certain skill sets and either they don't want to move or they can't move or, there's a handful of reasons. And why not, right? It's becoming so much more common, especially in the States and other parts of the world. It just makes a lot of sense, right? In a lot of cases.
It is. And we had some interesting moments here, just funny moments where, we're looking at insurance for our office, and then we went, well, we've got a lot of people working from home. Do we need to send an email around to keep their workspaces non-hazardous?
Oh, interesting.
It's like, keep scissors off of your desk at home, please. Like weird emails exchanged, but I think we figured that part out.
So I'm kind of curious to know, maybe then, if you want to talk quickly about some of the maybe challenges and kind of how you guys have kind of sorted those out with having a remote workforce kind of worldwide.
Yeah, it's tough. It is becoming more common, and there are tools that are working better and better to bring people together. It is tough. Having 200 people in the Bay Area today, 150 people remote.
Wow.
It's a tough, especially with 4 different offices. Even though there's some of them are small, bringing all those people together is definitely interesting. So we do a couple of things.
Okay.
We obviously use collaboration tools, email being one of them, of course, but
Sure.
HipChat, project
Okay.
management systems, especially with engineers in one place, project managers in another, bringing everything kind of online, and that helps a lot. We use Google Hangouts in some ways.
Sure.
I still don't believe teleconferencing has been figured out. I use GoToMeeting here, this there, Google Hangouts, and the day I actually figured out that teleconferencing was broken was when I went to visit Google and they couldn't get Google Hangouts to work at home at their own office. So.
Wow.
It's still tough to do a lot of the conferencing. HipChat lets us do a little bit of that. So we're a lot of that is still coming together. And then one other thing we do is, I worked with some people for 5 years before I had first met them.
Interesting.
And the only reason I met them was because we called kind of an all-team summit. So every year we fly every single employee at the company, whether they're kind of a contractor for us or a full-time employee. This year was just a couple weeks ago to San Diego. So we had 350 people in San Diego meeting
Wow.
for the first time, the majority of them. And food, drinking, a lot of events, team building, a keynote from me, and then anybody that wants to do a track was able to do a track and explain what kind of work they were doing. So really brought the team together. We've been doing this 3 years in a row now, and it's been going great.
That's awesome. So you basically almost run your own internal kind of mini conference?
That's right. And, people get excited for it. The new hires start talking about, how many more days it is until the summit, and they've never even been. So
Sure.
It's a pretty cool thing. We hope to keep going.
That's awesome. So do you do it in different cities every year, or is it always kind of in San Diego?
A little bit of it is budgetary concerns. So 2 years ago, we did it in Las Vegas.
Okay.
You can imagine how that went.
Probably your most expensive one ever.
Surprisingly, Vegas hotels are very cheap. It was like $50 a night.
Yeah, fair.
So the only issue is proximity to the Bay Area because of flights.
Right.
So we try to juggle that, but we try to give people better. We can't fly everybody to Hawaii. It would just be
Sure.
so expensive. But San Diego's pretty close. Las Vegas is an hour away. And we're looking for our next. San Francisco was one of them, of course, but we're looking for our next one here in the next 12 months.
Okay, so what time of year do you roughly do these?
January. So
Okay.
like I said, we had one 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we try to do it in January just to get the year started, because a
Sure.
lot of it is, here's what we're doing for the year, and here's what's changing, here's what's staying the same, and we talk about culture, values, all the fun corporate stuff. But I think people really get excited from the direction setting, because that's what people just need a vision, and the
Sure.
rest figures itself out. What are we going to be? And it works pretty well.
So basically, like how does it kind of work then? You mentioned kind of tracks and you give kind of a keynote, but so you have kind of internal people basically do presentations, or do you bring in kind of people from the outside world as well, or is it just kind of internal?
We've done both.
Okay.
There's so we've done both in that I start off with a keynote.
Okay.
Basically just, here's how we kicked butt last year. Here's how we're going to kick butt this year. It's maybe 20, 30 minutes. This year I had my other team members talk as well. So my VP of sales came up and said, here were the numbers. Here's what the numbers are going to be. Here's how we're going to get there. And a lot of it is, pumping people up and telling them, what we want to accomplish. I have brought in external speakers. So a guy named Michael Lopp
Okay.
spoke for us once, and he is the vice president of engineering at Pinterest. He was the vice president of engineering at Palantir, but he's got a great blog called Rands in Repose.
Okay.
And he also wrote a very interesting book called Managing Humans, and I absolutely love it. It just the most no nonsense book around managing people. It's great. So he spoke to the broader audience, and they really liked that. And then the rest of the event is basically who wants to talk. And they send us an email a couple of weeks in advance saying, I'd like to talk about this product that I'm building for the company, because somebody else in the organization may not be intimately familiar with it. So
Sure.
we curate those talks a bit, but it's really down to this engineer out of Clearwater, Florida, really wanted to speak about our cloud management console. We approved that talk. He came to the event and said, I'm going to speak about the cloud management console. He had an audience of about 100 people.
Interesting.
We recorded it for anybody that missed it, but he went through the entire product and people learned a lot. So it's trying to get the facts out there, the educational part of it, really meshing with the whole team.
No, that's awesome. So maybe let's kind of change gears a little bit and kind of talk about a little bit more about like what kind of products you guys offer. And maybe let's start with kind of for personal, and then we'll move to business. Does that sound good?
Perfect. Yeah. So the antivirus industry is one of the most broken industries in the world.
100% agree.
Obviously, there are much more broken industries, but antivirus, at least on the computer side of things, is pretty bad. You pay $90 a year for basically an antivirus that doesn't do much for you anymore.
Yep.
And this was true in 2008. This was true in 2002. When I founded Malwarebytes. So our goal was to clean up the mess that these antiviruses were causing, which is the remediation product that we have, and then basically to better protect our users. So when we launched the first version of the product, we said cleanup will be free, and we will charge for protection because we need to obviously pay our engineers.
Sure.
So if you go to our website today, you can actually download the product and for free do a scan of your entire computer, and for free remove all the malware off of your computer. And then you can uninstall the product. And 250 million people do this per year. So our commitment was back to the community, where we said anybody that has a malware infection like Marcin did, we don't ever want anybody to feel like Marcin did. So we're going to clean up your computer for free.
Interesting.
And we hope that, buys enough goodwill that people then spend the $25 a year for our protection capabilities. And that's really what we offer on the consumer side, is just the ability to remove malware off of your computer. If you want to uninstall the product after that, that's totally fine with us. But if you want to help the cause and protect your computer, you pay $25 per year.
Okay. No, that's interesting. How about the business side?
So the business side is a bit interesting. There's a huge shift in momentum on what these businesses are equipping themselves with. I think we've all seen all of the hacks in the news lately. The JP Morgan,
Totally.
the Ashley Madison.
Yep.
By now, I think you and I have probably gotten our credit cards stolen.
Yep.
Multiple times. I know I have employees that have had their healthcare, people that are remote that had their healthcare information or social security number stolen.
Oh,
So
wow.
businesses are, unfortunately, they're falling a bit flat on their face because there's a huge influx in the number of security companies, something like 3,000 security companies now offering enterprise software.
Okay. Interesting.
But the majority of them still use Malwarebytes for remediation. computers, and a lot of it is just the business model that we have. People like, people working at, let's say, JP Morgan, certainly there's somebody there that, out of the hundreds of thousands of employees that they have, using our product at home and knows our product at home. They would go to work, they'd have the same problem, maybe a malware infection, and they'd call over their IT guy and say, I have this problem and I need you to fix it using Malwarebytes. And that's how our product gets rooted into a lot of these larger enterprises.
Interesting.
So the remediation is not free for businesses. We actually charge for that.
Okay,
which makes sense. Which makes sense. And then we have something called endpoint security, which is very similar to what we do on the consumer side, just more enterprise grade.
Okay.
And it basically blocks malware through various different layers. And then if all heck breaks loose, we still have the remediation capability. And businesses are moving more towards an incident response kind of protocol, meaning at this point, they need to assume there will be a breach. They need to assume they will be infected, and they need to be able to respond quicker than ever. And that's where Malwarebytes really, maybe we were a little bit early with that, but today it's becoming a nice mechanism for people to be able to respond very quickly. If something like one of their perimeter software, so the thing protecting the network, lights up like a firecracker, that this specific computer may be infected, Malwarebytes gets shoved down onto the machine and cleans it up. But we can also do the protection capabilities. So the consumer and enterprise offerings are fairly similar. There's a lot of nuances that are changed. And of course, if you're a consumer, you only have one computer in front of you. If you're an enterprise, you may be managing hundreds of thousands of computers. So we built management capabilities. So basically, the IT guy never has to leave his seat.
Interesting.
So, yeah,
and
that's the difference.
Okay, and then I'm assuming that could you manage remote networks as well, or remote computers, as well?
Yeah, there's so part of the good question. A lot of, let's say, law firms have lawyers that travel all over the world.
Sure.
And they may not be connected to the corporate domain, to the home network, basically.
Right.
So we can certainly protect them, and when they come back online or come back home, they can ping back, all the information that was gathered or all the malware that was removed. But the protection is isolated to that endpoint. So we protect the actual computers.
Okay, interesting. So just for the kind of the listener, I'm kind of curious. Do you want to kind of cover the platforms that you guys kind of support? Like I know, just from your website and whatnot, you kind of have Windows and Mac, but do you maybe kind of want to cover almost like the difference between, what you kind of do on the PC and maybe what you do on the Mac? And if there's any other platforms you guys support?
Sure, yeah. So the joke is my Windows machine has been infected, right? Everybody.
Sure.
And if you want to be safer, you switch to a Mac. I mean, that's kind of the running joke in in the world, or whatever you want to call it. And inherently, that used to be true. Today, it's no longer true. In fact, so on the Windows side, of course, there's a ton of infections. And when I was, starting the company in 2002, that's what I got infected with on my Windows machine. That's what, we built the original software for. So we support Windows XP, which is still very much in use, even at your local ATM.
Totally.
Surprisingly.
Yep. Which blows my mind, but whatever.
Blows my mind too. Microsoft has stopped supporting Windows XP, and there are vulnerabilities and security vulnerabilities, exploits found every, couple of weeks.
Sure.
So that's still scary, but the majority of infections certainly, used to come from Windows. They are still a big problem today. On the Mac side, though, there was a company that piqued our interest a bit. It was called Adware Medic.
Not a great
name, but
sure.
We looked into this company. A friend recommended it, and I went to the Genius at the Apple Store. I think they're called Geniuses.
Sure.
And I asked him, if a computer comes in with adware or malware, what do you use? And he actually said Adware Medic. So I checked the box, and I said, wow, that's pretty powerful. Good test, good checkbox to have. So then I went home to my mom's Mac, and I ran Adware Medic, and it found a search hijacker.
Okay.
So basically, anytime she went to Google and typed in a website that or something, a search term that she wanted, it would take her to a completely different website and serve her advertisements.
Sure.
Now, that's not stealing your passwords. That's not taking your credit card information. That's not, stealing your data off of your computer. But it's annoying
Totally.
And it's a privacy concern because these guys are collecting what you're searching for.
Yep.
So we said, okay, malware is starting to starting to become a problem on the Mac. We've seen some big kind of influx of malware, and a lot of it was certainly search hijackers. So like I said, the stuff that just changes your search page and collects information on you and serves you advertising, but also true actual Trojans that may steal data, that may encrypt your hard drive and say, we want you to pay money for it. And of course, rogue as well, software that pretends to be something it's not and charges you money to on top of that. So we saw a big influx. So we bought this Adware Medic company, and then we built an Android product as well.
Okay, interesting. So like I'm a Mac user, and I've used Windows and Mac since pretty much like the early 90s and kind of even in the 80s a little bit. But, I think the Mac's probably a little bit more secure than Windows. And it's interesting that you kind of are helping people on the Mac as well. And I'm kind of curious to know more about Android a little bit and what you guys kind of do on that form. Because I think people just need to be aware of this stuff. And I think majority of people are like, well, I bought a Mac, I'm fine. Or, my smartphone's fine. But I'm just kind of curious to know what you guys are doing on Android as well. And then maybe after that, if you want to give people, some more examples of kind of what they should look out for on their smartphone.
Yeah, I'm pretty bearish when it comes to malware on mobile, meaning
Okay.
I don't think it's that big of an issue just yet.
Okay.
We certainly remove, so our product collects some telemetry around what we remove off those Android devices. And surprisingly, we remove a lot of Russian SMS Trojans, ones that actually charge you money off of phones in the United States.
Interesting.
So it's a really interesting data point. I was shocked that we would even do that. But beyond that, Android and iPhone are such locked down platforms that as a security vendor, we actually can't do anything fun and nifty on those platforms. So I'll put it in perspective. If I were a security product, I'd like to hook into the Android phone, and anytime you visit a website, before you're actually able to connect to it, I'd like to check it out first. So
Okay.
that way, so Android, you type in google.com, Android says, hang on, Google, I'm going to have Malwarebytes check if google.com is legitimate, and then release it back to you if it is. So Malwarebytes would say, yes, it's legitimate, go ahead and let the user go to that website. That's not how the architecture of Android's designed unless you root your phone.
Right. And most people don't root their phone, right?
And it's a bad idea to do so, so let's not even talk about that.
Sure.
But the real architecture of Android is, hey, Malwarebytes, I let Marcin go to google.com. And how does that help, right? That doesn't
Sure.
The damage has been done. And the same thing with application installations. We have to react to a lot of things, and that's not a good security architecture. With Windows, before you actually open an application, Malwarebytes is alerted that Windows has received a request to open an application, and then it's allowed to investigate it before it passes it back to the user. And that's
Okay.
that's a real good security architecture.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And then I know iOS is a lot more kind of locked down with that sense. Like, is there even anything you guys could do on iOS? Or is it even really a concern?
Yeah, not only is there nothing we can do because there's no APIs, there's no architecture that we can hook into, it is prohibited in the license agreement with the Apple Store.
Oh, okay.
That if you provide an anti-malware or antivirus or any kind of security application, now there's some privacy ones that are okay, but true antivirus, anti-malware, you're going to be banned from the App Store.
Okay.
At least that was true 2 years ago. I haven't looked at the iPhone App Store recently, but I know it was true 2 years ago.
Sure, and I guess the only way kind of around that is the jailbreaking community. But again, that's
right.
so small, and most people don't jailbreak their phone.
Exactly.
Okay, so you kind of have this like freemium to premium kind of model. I'm kind of curious to know, I know there's like always been a huge kind of debate over the last couple of years whether freemium actually kind of works. And it seems like in your case, it really has. And you don't need to kind of, I don't really necessarily, if you're not comfortable mentioning kind of the percentage of people that convert, that's fine. I'm more interested in just kind of knowing kind of how you guys make that kind of work for you and any kind of advice for people that are kind of looking to do something similar where they give like a free version and then say pay yearly for extra features or whatnot?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, by the way, and I can certainly tell you that conversion rates in any freemium model are less than 1%.
Okay.
And the problem with people that I don't want to say bash freemium or say it doesn't work is simply they just don't understand it. They don't understand freemium, and it's a very interesting model, but one that takes a lot of care and feeding.
Okay.
Taking care of your users, giving them repeat access to free products, and then eventually, playing the long game, understanding that they may convert down the road downstream. We have people that have used the product for 2 years for free before they even convert.
Okay.
So a lot of these companies, after 6 months of freemium, panic because the revenue stream isn't there and start shoving advertising into the product. That is no longer freemium.
Right.
That is ad-supported software, which a lot of people that love freemium actually frown upon.
Sure. And it's also probably a little bit weird for you guys to put ads in kind of like a malware type product, right?
Oh, it's the worst thing you could do. I mean,
sure.
It's stuff we blog about every day, that this advertising platform was hacked. I mean, we would be in pretty bad shape should that ever happen. And to avoid that problem in general, we're just never doing advertising in the product.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. And I think you kind of mentioned something earlier where maybe I use the product personally on my home computer, but then when I take it into kind of my work and go to the IT guy and say, let's use this product on the work machine, and then their pay, the company I work for ends up paying for it, is probably a pretty good model for you guys, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
It works great. So let's say last year we had something like 250 million uses of the product, which is a lot.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Well, thank you. This is where freemium is really interesting because, less than 1% of that, let's say 2 million people bought the product. Now, sure. That's a healthy business. That's a very healthy business. It lets me pay for my engineers. But there's a cherry on top of that. The other several hundred million were obviously employed and went to work, and what shook out of that was several hundred leads per week, several thousand leads per week of real legitimate businesses coming to us and saying, I want to buy Malwarebytes. So that freemium model converted even further into enterprise sales for us, which is now half of our revenue. Okay,
interesting. So you basically leverage almost like the personal up to the enterprise. That's interesting.
That's right. If you kind of if you draw a pyramid, the consumers are at the bottom, the large Fortune 100 are at the top, and it moves upstream. And we typically even start with just small departments in large organizations.
Okay.
Let's say you take a hospital, a big hospital account for us. It's likely that we might have started with a couple of consumers, nurses, doctors, maybe one of the IT guys knows a little bit about Malwarebytes. And then we started maybe with radiology or oncology, maybe neurosurgery, whatever the departments would be, and then eventually there's enough of departments in the organization that the chief information security officer went and said, well, let's just buy an enterprise license of Malwarebytes, and that lets us deploy even further, and then the whole business is using the product.
No, that's actually really interesting, and actually kind of fascinating to me. So how long is usually that conversion rate? Like you said, it could be a couple of years.
Yeah.
Is it traditionally kind of a year or two, or can it be longer than that? I'm just trying to get the listener to kind of realistically understand how long it can take for you to become successful from kind of a freemium to premium model.
I wish I had a lot of historical data.
Okay.
It took weeks or months kind of in the beginning. Now there's a lot of word of mouth, goodwill that Malwarebytes is attributed to. So we actually see a big chunk of our user, let's say 1 million users convert per year.
Okay.
About 50% of those convert immediately after the scan found and removed the malware. So we show instant benefit, and that's where a lot of the conversions come from. And then there's a 14-day trial. There's another 25% that come after that. And then the other 25% is this long tail. It might take forever, to convert that user. And then business leads even further out. I mean, you have to build a brand, you have to get people talking about the product. It takes a while. But if you can show immediate benefit, I mean, that's pretty powerful.
Actually, that's actually really good advice. Immediate benefit is, you can convert. And if you guys start at $25, that's not that much. Like most people can just be like, yeah, no big deal, right? I'm just going to handle this and take care of it and be done with it. One thing that I am curious about is you mentioned about a 14-day trial. Is that like, have you done any testing around kind of doing like a longer trial or a shorter trial? And like, or was there any reason you kind of settled on 14 days?
So we haven't built the infrastructure to be able to try out the different days yet. We're working on that right now, actually, because it's a really interesting test to run.
Sure.
But I can tell you that from 2008 to 2010, so from when I started when we launched the first product to around 2010, we had no trial whatsoever. You can run the removal and then just trust us. Buy the product for $25.
Okay.
And we enabled a 14-day trial, and conversions doubled overnight.
Interesting. Okay.
So people got to actually try the product, which is a no-brainer. I mean, it just seems obvious, but on, we were running too fast to even think about it.
Sure. No, makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, but then you look at it from a regular person's perspective. I mean, if you and I are buying something, we sure as heck want to try it, right?
Yep. No, it makes sense. But the thing is that sometimes like it seems obvious once you add something, but it's interesting that there's certain things that you almost need an outside perspective to actually give you something like that, where you're like, whoa, we should add this, and now it doubles our conversion. And I think it's super important. And the thing that's interesting to me about that is that you constantly are trying new things to kind of convert faster or make it better for the user.
Oh, there's even better things than that. So
okay. Do you want to cover some of those? Or?
Oh, sure. This is just hilarious. So in the product, there's a buy now button, of course.
Okay, sure.
If you click that buy now button, it takes you to a nice little page inside the product that tells you, here's what you get. We want to be open and honest, and here's the product, the actual features that you'll get. Here's what you'll pay. So obviously, a lot of people see that experience, and the way they feel about that experience it determines whether they're going to buy or not.
Right.
Same with you and I. If you go to a site that looks really complicated or not necessarily reputable, you're going to nope the heck out of there. You're going to close that box. So we decided to do some A/B testing, and what A/B testing is, basically you put two candidates forward, and you track the conversion rates of both candidates. So one will be a green button, one will be an orange button. And you see how many sales come in through each and how many visitors looked at both, at each of them, and you see which one performs better.
Interesting, yeah.
So little things like changing the button color from green to orange, I mean, yield 10% conversion increases.
Wow, so that's interesting.
The psychology. You would think price would be the biggest thing, right? No, it's how do you feel about the product? Is it warm? Does it give you enough information about the purchase? That's the kind of stuff that people really look at, and it's shocking.
Sure. It's interesting because like I work as a creative director at a software company, and so I totally get this, and I think that it's interesting, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is not about, at the end of the day, like what I think looks better or what you think looks better. It's about what converts the user better, right?
That's right.
And like it is fascinating to me that basically changing a button color can convert by 10%, but obviously we're going to do it. You and I might not like the color that converts better, but it doesn't matter.
I learned that the hard way, that my opinion does not matter, and it's the data that drives the decisions.
Totally.
And one of the experiences was this beautiful, box that says, here are the features you get. And that literally, word for word, that's what it said. And then it listed 3 or 4 nice features and a big buy now button with the price very, open and evident. And then the other candidate, which is the one that actually won, was just a wall of text, and it looked so ugly. It was just testimonials from 100 customers jammed into a tiny area that we could put in, and it converted like crazy.
Really?
People wanted to see. It was just nuts. I mean, so you get the point. I mean,
totally.
It drives people like me insane to see the data and go, what are you doing, guys?
I know. I know that's the thing, but I think it's super important that, businesses think about this stuff, because like me being a designer by trade, like I cringe sometimes at what converts better. But when you're thinking about it from the business side and the user side, that, it doesn't really matter. And like, I get it. Everybody thinks that their department is like the most important and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think sometimes we forget about kind of the user and what converts the best and what they prefer. And at the end of the day, 10% to change a button color is a huge reason to change the button color.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Totally agree.
I'm kind of curious, though, do you have any other examples for kind of the listener that you made kind of like something like a simple modification that converted or changed the conversion by a significant number?
That's a good question. We do so many tests, so many tests.
But then maybe if you don't have like a specific example, do you have kind of other ideas on kind of what you've tried, other tests like A/B testing, user testing? Do you kind of like want to talk maybe about other testing, not necessarily specific examples, but other things that you try to kind of get user feedback?
On the renewal side, so obviously a customer is as good as that customer is with the company. So renewing the customers is very important, of course.
Yeah.
We've tried some interesting stuff that's worked pretty well. A letter from the CEO on why the company was founded, what we stand behind or stand for, and why a renewal is so important to us, to keep the business going.
Sure.
That's worked pretty well. Just being open and honest, putting stuff like values, culture on the company makes people enticed to buy the product, at least on the consumer side. I mean, when I buy, products online, I check out the management team page. I check out the About Us page, why the company exists, what problems it's trying to solve. Maybe I'm just weird and
No, I do the same thing. And to be fair, like I've done some kind of user testing and A/B testing in my past, and even just watching analytics, that a lot of sites, even whether it's just like a brochure website or it's a startup or you're building a physical or digital product, a lot of people and a lot of your most trafficked pages on your website are your kind of team management pages. Like people really want to know like who's building the products and services that I use.
Exactly.
And that was so fascinating to me because like you mentioned, like I thought it was just kind of me at first before I kind of realized this, right? But people do their homework and they're curious.
Yeah, and there's some really great pages out there. I mean, go on like Tesla's website.
Sure,
You can
love
see,
it.
You see their vision, their mission. Obviously, Elon Musk. We all know Elon Musk,
Sure.
but who else is part of the company? Why are they there? And it's a lot deeper than just how we build electric cars. That's not what Tesla's about.
No, you're right. And I think that's super important to kind of stress that people want to know about the company. And it's interesting that you kind of give a high-level CEO update when renewal time comes along. And, it's awesome that kind of converted for you. That's fascinating to me.
We were doing some not so great things, like maybe 10 days out we'd say, hey, your product's renewing, good luck. I'm not saying seriously that's what we were doing, but it turns out if you reach out to the customer several weeks ahead of time and say, look, your renewal's coming up, get ready for it. Some people need to shift money around or need to change their credit card information. I mean, all that kind of stuff needs to come into consideration, and then an update to the company or what we've been doing or what your renewal's going towards definitely helped. I mean, little things like that.
Interesting. What your renewal's going towards is interesting. So you're basically telling them we're building these features and they're coming in the new year or something?
A lot of it is very, very high level, such as, hey, we've hired 150 engineers since the time we last spoke, which maybe was the last renewal. And we're kicking malwares, but even better. And we're introducing this new feature that's going to be rolled into our product. It's in beta today. And that kind of stuff goes into those emails.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm kind of curious. We're running out of time here, but I just kind of want to get your thoughts on kind of where do you think the whole industry's kind of going? And is there kind of anything that people should kind of look out for in 2016 and kind of beyond?
Yeah, like I said, the antivirus industry in general, the security industry in general is a very broken industry. I think there's a lot of new companies such as Malwarebytes that are coming out of the woodwork to make some reform happen.
Sure.
And, a lot of these old traditional antivirus companies spend a lot of money on sales and marketing. And the new wave of technology companies are exactly that, technology companies. They spend money on engineers like we do and build technologies like we do. So I think there's going to be a lot of new security companies, we'll see what happens and how they shake out. I definitely think that security is top of mind for businesses, for consumers alike.
Yeah.
And I think 2016 is just as dangerous as 2015 was. Back up your data, change your passwords every so often, run anti-malware, antivirus software, practice clean hygiene on the internet. I mean, don't visit websites you shouldn't be on.
Totally. And you don't post photos or anything to the internet that you don't want potentially to get hacked at some point.
Exactly. Any data you put on the internet, expect it to be stolen.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think it's only going to potentially get worse over the coming years as bigger and bigger companies kind of get hacked. Like it kind of puts things in perspective, right?
I feel like we've left it on a very depressing note. So Malwarebytes is here to help.
No, I think it's good, but part of it too is I want to be kind of real about this stuff, right? Because I think in some ways people are just starting to really care about kind of their online privacy, security, and whatnot. And I think it's and why I kind of wanted you to on the show was to basically get people kind of saying here's the problem and then here's the solution to that. And I think what you guys are doing is the solution to a lot of this stuff, right?
Well, yeah, thank you. And users can go see if they have a problem with their computer just by downloading Malwarebytes. So we still have that service for free.
No, that's awesome. So maybe let's kind of close the show with promoting again, kind of what you guys kind of do for people on a personal or business level, quick, just in case people came into the show a little bit late, and then where people can download the software, and then if you want to promote any social links that people can kind of check out with the company or you personally.
Sure. So just to recap, our consumer product basically can scan your computer, find any malware that's on it, and remove it for free. And for $25, we can protect your computer going forward. We work alongside any security solutions you already have. On the business side, very similar. We have a lot of management capabilities, but it's incident response, basically responding to computers that might be infected or breached, and helping you out there. If you want to learn more about Malwarebytes, just go to malwarebytes.org. At the very bottom, there's also the social links for Facebook, Twitter. We're very active on both, and we're very happy to chat with you if you'd like.
Awesome. Marcin, thanks again for taking the time into your busy schedule. I wish you much success in 2016, and it seems like you guys are growing like crazy, and I think that's awesome. Thanks again for doing the show, and I'm excited to keep in touch with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks, man.
Likewise. Thanks, Kevin.
Perfect. Later. Bye. Thanks for listening. The music for the show was done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com. and keep building the future.